So if you get a call for an order and you want to know if you have it, you're literally like, hey,
Like that
Mike,
guy.
hey, Mike, do we have this? How much do we have? And they both burst out laughing. And I go, oh, is that exactly what happens? They go, yeah, not only
Yes.
that, but his name is Mike. So
Welcome to ERP on Tap, your steady flow of everything you want to know about NetSuite and Acumatica. The podcast where we dive into practical tips, expert insights, and real-world examples, exploring the tools, tips, and tricks you need to make your business processes flow like never before.
greetings, everybody. I'm Jonathan McKee.
And I'm Iqra Harrison.
Hey, and this week we're really looking forward to our show, episode 1, Iqra. I mean, this is pretty
I know,
cool, huh?
super exciting. Really excited to kick this off.
Yeah, and we have two guests who not only really understand the challenges that product companies are facing during uncertain times, and let's face it, when in the last 5 years has it not
I feel
been
like we live
uncertain
in
times?
a constant state of uncertainty.
That's right. That is the certainty right now. That it's
Yeah,
going to be
that's the only
uncertain.
thing I'm certain about is
That
that it's going to be uncertain.
I'm pretty certain. So not only do they understand these challenges, but also some of the tools that can help you navigate wise inventory management and planning. So it should be a
Yeah,
fun
super
show.
exciting and
Yeah,
it's super, educational, really being able to learn more and seeing what tools we have to kind of manage all those
yeah.
uncertainties.
Well, and that's the cool thing too is Iqra, you and I are kind of spoiled because we work, there's 50 of us here at Portello. We've got people down the hallway where, I mean, just this morning, somebody asked me a question that I didn't know. That happens all the time, by the way. And
I
since
know
I
it
didn't
all.
know,
What do you
I
mean?
literally was able to walk down the hall, 4 doors to the left and be like, hey, Brianne, what about this? And ask a
And
question.
get
And
the
I love
answer you
that.
need.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I thought, wouldn't it be cool to share with you, our listeners, some of the experiences we're experiencing. Wow, that was really well said. And because whether you're a product company or a service company during these uncertain times, let's share the wealth a little bit. Let's share
Yeah.
some of the tools we're using that work, that don't work, and that's kind of really our goal for this podcast. So I'm
Yeah,
excited.
really exciting, honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
It's gonna be great.
Iqra, tell me how's your love to hear how's your week been?
Yeah, so my week's been pretty crazy, I will say. I had to travel cross country from Florida to the cold cold state of California. Yeah, guys, didn't know it's so cold here in March. I feel like next podcast should be hosted in Orlando outside with a
Iqra always gives us grief.
yeah,
See, we have little insight into us here at Portello.
Fratello.
We've got consultants all over North America. Iqra is in Florida. One of our main offices is in California, but it's in Northern California. Okay, now I know when people think California, they think maybe that you're laying on the beach
Baywatch.
with little drinks with umbrellas in them and stuff. But she came to
Yeah.
NorCal, and it was probably 36 degrees
Oh my
when you
God.
got here.
Yes, my closet, I have to bring every single piece of winter clothing that I own, and it's very limited now.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, I'm glad you escaped Florida. You went from the land of hurricanes to the land of fires here in
Yes,
California.
and
So,
earthquakes. I heard there's a lot of earthquakes here too.
yeah, luckily here in the Sacramento area, not too many. But glad you made it here. Glad your flight was on time. We're glad to
Yes,
have
no
you. So,
delays. Thankfully, the win. I'll take that. Um, I
uh,
mean, it's a long flight, and you're going across multiple time zones, just like kind of going
yeah.
all areas.
So hopefully you're adjusting to this. Hopefully you're not like I don't know how many cups of coffee you've had yet, but this is good. This is good. Glad you're
Yes,
here.
lots of them. I'm not going to announce that.
Okay. We'll keep that. Well, I'll tell you
Keep
what,
the
today.
mystery alive.
Absolutely. Well, today's topic is relevant for so many companies, so many of you as listeners. I mean, let's be honest. If you're a product company, and it's okay if you're a service company too, because inventory is real, right? But
Mhm.
this week's focus really talking about inventory during uncertain times, and whether you sell product or make product, inventory is a key part of what you do. And like Iqra and I were talking about, I mean, in the last 5 years, we've seen things like a bunch of ships right outside waiting to dock and not being able to dock. And meanwhile, we're all watching, the prices of materials going
Skyrocket.
up. Yeah. And wanting to fulfill a customer order and not knowing, can we tell this customer yet yes or not? So these are some of the real issues we want to talk about, and not to mention just day-to-day issues, certainty or uncertainty, the day-to-day issues of knowing how much inventory we have and the insight into what that looks like. So I think let's take a turn and let's bring and introduce our guest. Does that sound like a good plan, Iqra?
Yeah, exactly. Definitely.
All right,
Let's bring them in.
Hey, this is exciting. I'm so excited that our two guests are here. Let me not waste any time. I would like to introduce to you CJ Limerese and Jeff O'Neill. Both are my coworkers. I get to work with them every day, and I wanted to be able to introduce them to all of you. So, Jeff and CJ, thanks for being with us today.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start off right away. I would love everyone else to get just a glimpse of who y'all are. So I want to ask you each, and let me just start with CJ. Tell us a little bit about your background and maybe a little bit about what you do day to day. So CJ, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I come from a wholesale distribution background. I worked in wholesale distribution for about, 11 years.
Okay.
And I wore a lot of hats there.
Mhm.
I was everything from a warehouse worker to an operations manager to purchasing, and then eventually worked my way over into ERP management for that organization. Here, I kind of have a similar role where I wear a lot of different hats. I am a functional consultant. I am working in pre-sales, and I'm also a project coordinator here. So you name it, I've probably done it at some point. It seems like in my
That's
positions.
Awesome. I love it that CJ worked in the warehouse, because so much of what we do on the topic today, talking about inventory, starts with at the warehouse and understanding that. So at the stock level, where stuff is. So cool.
We got the inside scoop here.
That's right. Absolutely. Good. Jeff, tell us a little bit about your background. And this is fun, because in this podcast, we talk really a lot about two systems, NetSuite and Acumatica. Jeff, you've got quite an interesting background with NetSuite. I think a lot of listeners know that there's NetSuite. There's two ways you can get NetSuite. You can get it from NetSuite from Oracle directly. You can get NetSuite from one of their partners. Both are great ways to do it. And sometimes there's a little crossover. You've experienced a little bit of both. So, Jeff, with that in mind, tell us about your background.
Sure, Jonathan, thanks. A lot of my background is in retail and manufacturing. But as you suggested, I've actually worked for NetSuite directly for almost a dozen years, both here in North America and in Australia, supporting Asia Pacific. So yeah, I've been around the bend with NetSuite, and I've certainly experienced their end of it, and I've been on the other end too. So a lot of fun.
That's it. Jeff's the guy that whenever we are talking with a customer and a customer mentions some place in the world, Jeff will be like,
been there.
I lived there for 3 years. So
that's been my experience with Jeff.
Isn't that true? And so if you're ever traveling somewhere, just ping Jeff, because he'll tell you not only how to get there, but where to stay and where to eat. Jeff, what's your favorite place you've been in the world?
Oh, most definitely the Kingdom of Thailand. That's where I'm going to live in the future, and that's my favorite spot, no doubt.
I love it.
Why? Give us some inside scoop here.
The beauty of the land, the beauty of the people. It's just an amazing place, a really special place. But don't tell anybody.
Okay.
Food.
Nobody. Listeners, you hear that? Please do not do not hit that subscribe button. Do not tell others about this podcast, because we don't want Jeff's secret to go out. So, guys, this is a fun topic. I mean, when we talk about inventory, I mean, there's so many different things that are relevant to us in different ways, and depending on what we do. But I mean, I remember a customer who shared with me that they were doing an inventory count, and they found $100,000 worth of inventory that they forgot they had. And they were sitting there beforehand talking about cash flow, and man, cash flow is an issue. But so I mean, understanding inventory is a huge thing that really honestly trickles down to the bottom line. I don't know about you guys, but in my house, I am the inventory manager. I'm in charge of inventory, and something very real happened during uncertain times. You guys might remember the early 2000s. in the early 2000s, before everything started to on the news talk about this, this interesting new, virus that was out there. It was, things just seemed normal. And my wife and I were at Costco, which we would call our warehouse. And as we were there, we passed the toilet paper, and my wife goes, "Hey, we got enough toilet paper in our house, right?" Well, in my house, I don't have a system that manages inventory. The system is I walk out to the garage, look up on the shelf and go, "Oh, yep, I got one of those big bags with about a year's supply of toilet paper on there." Well, she asked me, and I honestly didn't know. I said, "I think we got one of those big bags. I think I remember seeing that." What I had remembered, a little spoiler alert here, was paper towels. We had plenty of paper towels. What I'd forgotten was that we literally were down to like one of the little packages of like maybe I think it's 6 rolls within the big package of all the 6 rolls. So we're down to literally, I think 5 or 6 rolls. And I told her, "Oh, I think we have plenty." Well, fast forward just a few weeks later, all of a sudden on the news, everybody's all like, people are rushing to stores for toilet paper. I went, there was none. Let's just say that in my house, I wasn't very popular for a while. I was like, "Come on, guys, we got sandpaper, we got other alternatives." But no, it was a very unpopular move because I didn't know my inventory at my house.
Fireable fence.
It was. It should have been a fire. Yeah, I could have been fired.
We would have had some issues.
Absolutely. So anyway, that was my own personal story as an inventory manager for sure. I'm sure none of you guys have experienced anything like that.
Well, it's interesting. During the pandemic, I was actually living in Australia, and Australia had a real problem with toilet tissue as well. I think almost everywhere it did, but Australia is very reliant on stuff coming in from China to supply the needs. So there was no toilet paper, and there was mass panic in grocery stores to buy toilet paper. There was this great news story came out of Queensland about a woman who went online, had a family of 4, and was looking to buy toilet paper so her family could be safe and happy and hygienic. She went online. Yeah, she went online. She ordered, she said, "Oh, I'll get 48 rolls of toilet paper." So she ordered 48. And the next thing you know, the delivery guy shows up with a large truckload and pallets of toilet paper. She had actually ordered 48 boxes, not 48 rolls, and literally filled her garage with toilet paper. It was crazy. And she ended up giving a lot of that away. And it was a great thing in Queensland because a lot of people needed toilet paper, and she had a lot that she couldn't use. But businesses face that all the time. I mean, she ended up stockpiling enough toilet paper accidentally to last her family for 12 years. But that happens to businesses too. All of a sudden, I've overbought, and now I've got enough product to last me years. Will the product last years? Will it be a relevant product 5 years from now, 2 years from now, even 1 year from now? And that's where that just-in-time inventory is really critical. Getting what I need to sell into my warehouse just in time to sell it to my customers, and making sure that it's always there when they want it.
Well, you bring up a key issue, and it's funny. Even we look at these fun personal stories of right. If we were inventory managers in our houses, but I mean, there's some really crazy challenges right now when it comes to inventory. Anything from, supply chain disruptions that we've seen over the years because of delays, shortages,
lead times.
Think about that. Ships out there that who would have predicted that, what happened during COVID, right? Tariffs, been in the news a lot, and stuff like that, and how much that's affecting the costs. Transportation costs is another issue because we see fuel prices go up and down. So all of a sudden, transportation issues, and all of a sudden now we've got to weigh that cost into the price of our product, that kind of stuff. Also, with social media being as popular as it is, think of the customer demand volatility. I'll call it. It's where you basically see people will all of a sudden hear about something sooner or faster, and people will jump on certain things. During COVID, we saw some weird stuff with customer demand where all of a sudden fitness equipment, you couldn't even find fitness equipment. So price on fitness equipment went up because the demand for it was so much. The demand for RVs and boats. You'll probably hear on this podcast me talk about RVs. I love RVs. I love pulling trailers, that kind of stuff. And so I always keep up with that kind of stuff. And it was amazing how during COVID, you could not find an RV or an RV spot. So it is interesting how much uncertain times can bring about different demands and different things. So with that in mind, as we're talking about inventory, I want to ask Jeff and CJ, I want to ask you guys, either of you jump in. What are some of the key challenges? Because you guys deal with our customers all the time. What are some of the key challenges you're seeing out there that inventory companies are experiencing?
I think the first thing, and you sort of alluded to it, Jonathan, is what is my actual cost of the goods I'm selling? What is my COGS for each of my products? So that can include things, as you mentioned, maybe it's the shipment that's coming in and I have tariffs or taxes and other fees I have to pay. Maybe it's the truck that's delivering that's hitting me with a charge for that. There's a lot of things to consider when it comes to pricing my product and maintaining profitability. I need to consider what is the real cost of those goods getting to my warehouse. That's a critical one.
Okay, good. And we're going to probably talk about a little bit about how to do that. What are some of the other challenges that we're seeing?
I mean, speaking personally, coming from a background of, like I had mentioned before, working in a warehouse doing purchasing, a lot of smaller organizations tend to have that knowledge of knowing when to buy things, how much of it to buy. That's wrapped up in an individual, or maybe a couple of people within
one
the
guy,
organization.
literally
in
one
their
guy,
head.
yeah, one
Correct.
person.
And as soon as that person maybe gets sick, maybe they move on to another, they get another job, they go on vacation. That knowledge is so hard to transfer between people. It's something that is very difficult to quantify unless somebody has a system that's written out somewhere. And a lot of times they don't. I mean, I didn't really when I was working in that space. And a lot of it I just knew. And that's great, but you don't even know if you're not right 100% of the time. Nobody's perfect at it. So, it's.
I think that experience. Oh,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that experience, that real life experience of being that jack of all trades and having to juggle that, just kind of makes you stronger functionally as a consultant now, because you're like looking out for, what those flags are. That it's so important to have a system and have something documented. I love a good checklist. So I am always constantly putting that in a checklist form, and let's put a system behind what's going on in your head.
Right. Having that reporting available to you where you're able to quantify whether your purchasing patterns are correct, whether stock is sitting on your shelves. It's one thing to have somebody who can do the job, but it's another thing to be able to have some sort of metrics on whether this is actually an effective buying strategy for you.
It's funny how real this is, because I literally just a couple months ago remember talking with a customer, asking probably one of the key questions we ask when somebody comes to us and they're looking to see if possibly one of these systems would help them with this kind of day-to-day, forecasting and planning or whatever. And I asked them, I said, hey, what's your biggest pain point right now? What's not working well? And they said, we're just so manual with all this. And they described a warehouse situation much like yours. They're just like, it's tough to know what's there. And we've got, and they just named, they just said, they didn't even say his name. They just go, we've got this one guy who knows it really well. I said, so if you get a call for an order and you want to know if you have it, you're literally like, hey, Mike, do we have this? How much do we have? And they both burst out laughing. And I go, oh, is that exactly what happens? They go, yeah, not only that, but his name is Mike. So, but literally, this is a real situation where some of us, we do have some very manual processes when it comes to this, and we don't have that visibility, which, going back to my Costco example, when I was there at Costco, I needed to make a decision right then, right now. I don't have in my house, visibility into what's there. And in the real world, what we're finding is a lot of companies, if they had the information to make that right decision at the right time, then that would help them possibly make that sale or whatever. So thank you, CJ. Good.
Yeah.
Good. And that's really where NetSuite can do a lot to help a customer, Jonathan, because there's a bunch of factors here, right? The first one, and it's sort of where it all begins. What is the customer demand? Does it change with the season? What product is in demand? Let's say as we approach the holiday season, might be Christmas lights. but you're probably not going to sell a lot of those in February. So I've got to anticipate where my customer demand is at what time of year for what products. And then I've got to think outside the box a little bit and think, well, for me to get those Christmas lights, where am I getting them from? How long does it take an order to be placed? How long does it take to deliver to me? How long do I want to keep it in my warehouse? And then how long does it take to get to the customer? And all those things are essentially connected to the idea of what do I need to put in my inventory in my warehouse, and when do I need to have it there? And those are important questions. And NetSuite's a great platform for that because as a unified database, all those different factors come together. And NetSuite can actually make recommendations to you to say, hey, be careful. It's coming up on the holidays. You need to get your holiday lights in, and we know it's going to take this long to get them to my warehouse. So
Yeah. No, that's really good, Jeff. That's good. And that's almost ready to segue to the what are some of the solutions that we can have to help with these challenges. But let me make sure we didn't miss anything. Any other challenges that we're hearing over and over again from people when it comes to this, because maybe some people have different little systems in place. Any other challenges we're hearing with what they've got already that's maybe not working?
My challenge is, I mean, just having everything in one system, right? Like everything is across the board. Again, one's with Mike, one's with CJ, then there's Jeff, and nobody talks. Nobody has that
Mhm.
conversation. And like having something systematically in one system where you're not dependent on all these different spreadsheets, all these different silos. I definitely love having one source of truth.
That's great. That's great. And listeners, it's no secret. If you choose to keep listening to this podcast, you'll get to know Iqra as well. Get to know myself. We both consult on both NetSuite and Acumatica. Iqra is one of our Acumatica team members. So when she talks about one system, she's talking about Acumatica. Acumatica does that well. As a matter of fact, just a little bit of bragging stuff. Iqra will hate it when I do this, but out of like tens of thousands of users, Iqra just got the Acumatica MVP award, which means that she's like the Jalen Hurts, or as a Chiefs fan, I would have to say the Pat Mahomes of the Acumatica world right now. So congrats, Iqra.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I did
cool.
basketball instead of football, by the way. So hopefully we can edit that out, guys. No, but
you're
no,
allowed
definitely feel like an MVP. Just gonna piggyback. It's also something I've only been in the industry for only a few years, so it's just it's a humbling experience just knowing that like all the efforts and the value, the customer interactions, the community engagement, stuff like that really just kind of pays off. And there's something that I can hold, I guess, at the end of it, right? So it's really exciting. I love the journey.
We appreciate your insight here. This is great. On the subject of the challenges, listeners, please jump into the comment section and let us know what are some of the key challenges you face. Because not only, I said I'd love to share some of the knowledge that I experience here in this building and with our consultants, but you know what else is a great resource is y'all. And we'd love to hear from you, because very often when someone chimes in a comment, what about this? Then others can chime in and say, hey, here's what I've experienced. So please tell us what some of those key challenges you are that you're facing. We'd love to read them. And I know there's other people that would like to read about it and might even be able to chime in and talk about it. And that's a good segue to, okay, we experience these challenges. We experience the challenge of something like you might be that person who's got 4 different systems right now, like Iqra described, that don't talk to each other. That might be a challenge. Knowing exactly the inventory we need at the right time. We talked about many of these things. What are some of the solutions? And Jeff and CJ, I want to go back to you. What are some of the solutions that we are able to help customers with experiencing these challenges?
So, I think first of all and Iqra alluded to it, it's the unified database, that one source of truth, so you can really understand how your business operates. And it's surprising what customers learn when they look at things from that single perspective. You get that siloed approach, creating this giant stack of technology as opposed to looking at it from one source of truth. It really does change your perspective.
It's one of those elements of having the information you need when you need it, because not only having it in one system, but having it in a real-time system is so important. I had a customer who shared with me, this was the head of sales, and I asked that same question, what was the main pain point you're experiencing? And for them, they were saying getting the right information in a timely manner, because he would get these phone calls or email inquiries or something saying, hey, do you have this many of this item? And he says, these people want a decision in like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. He goes, and with the systems we had in place, we just couldn't get them that information that fast. And think about it. If you're one of those companies that's like, hey, Mike, how much of that do you got? Or or even you might have to switch from one system to another, or you might have to ping somebody and say, hey, do we have enough of this to make this item? If you're a manufacturer,
make or break a little sale.
Yeah. Right. And this guy shared with me, he goes, last week, I lost a $20,000 sale because he goes, it took me 3 hours to get back to them. By them, he went to one of our competitors. And for him, he was sitting there saying that the system, he was just kind of looking at a starting system with us that was less than 20 grand a year. He's like, man, I could have paid for my first year of ERP with what I lost on this one sale. So yes, having a system in place, there's not only one place to go to for all this.
Competitive edge.
Yeah. I mean, it
literally will save you and money, time, and lead to more sales. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, that visibility.
Return on investment, right? I mean, return on investment is what everyone's looking for up front, and that's one way to get
it. It's right there in front of you.
Yeah, CJ, you're talking about visibility.
Well, and I think that, when you mentioning the single source of truth, as we refer to it as, just the visibility, like having that end-to-end visibility of, we're talking about inventory, right? We're talking about it coming in, going out the door, and there's this gulf, so to speak, between these different siloed systems that has to be crossed every single time you want to get information, especially of how one's process might relate to another. Whereas in NetSuite, you have this end-to-end visibility of from the moment a purchase request comes in the door to the moment that product goes out the door to when a vendor bill comes in to when that's like, you can see what happened with that item, the entire chain. There's no jumping between systems there. That's something that anybody in the organization can do, has the ability to do potentially. So it's really, just removing that, I hate to say busy work, tedium of having to look between disparate systems and match
making people more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not spending that time and resources on tasks that can be automated. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily replacing, your people, right? Because I feel like that's one of the biggest, I think people get scared about that. Like, hey, we're gonna not be able to do our jobs, and there's
get rid of Mike the warehouse guy.
Yeah, right. No, we're not going to give you. We're just going to give you the right tools to be able to do your job successfully and efficiently. And now you have information, and there's you're not wasting money on doing things 3 different times.
Well, I bet a lot of our listeners probably it rang true when CJ even talked about, when you used to work in a warehouse, CJ, and you said you were kind of the guy and you knew it and it was in your head. I've seen companies where that guy did leave. And we had a company last year that we dealt with. It's now one of our customers. And they bought a company that had experienced all kinds of turnover. And literally, when they were asked them questions about like, where's this, where's that? They're like, I don't know. That would have been Luis. And Luis left 2 months ago. And they didn't know. And this particular company was going through the warehouse and finding inventory they didn't know they had. They actually told the story of how they moved a shelf and found a door that they didn't know that existed. And they went in and it was the land of Narnia. No, but they went inside and this door, and there was this room full of inventory they didn't even know they had. Right. And this is kind of where all of a sudden having systems in place, you're not relying on Mike, the warehouse guy, or Luis, the warehouse guy, whoever it was, you now know where everything is. And so that visibility it's a real thing.
Yep. And it gives you flexibility to know exactly where in the warehouse that it is, right? There's so much information that I think it just kind of streamlines it. And I think of aisles and shelves, right? I'm like, I know exactly where to go.
Yeah.
And it's just really cool. It's a really strong system that really can, alleviate all of that uncertainty.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, you just think about a warehouse. When you receive merchandise in, what's the first thing you want to do? You want to check it. Not only do I want to
Yeah.
count it, make sure I got what I expected to get, but I may need to quarantine it. I may need to inspect it. Some of it may need to go back because it's defective.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to put it away. And I got guys that are packing orders that are needing to put stuff away, and I've got to come up with strategies for all that. Having that single view of your business, you can structure all that together. And it's amazing. And from a global perspective, just imagine a company maybe based in the US with large operations here, but they've got operations in Singapore, they've got operations in the Czech Republic, and they've got to understand what the different areas are demanding from their customers and where their products need to be. Do I need to move it from one warehouse to another? Do I need to place an order in one particular place because it's cheaper in terms of tariffs and fees to order to one warehouse versus another? All important considerations. And again, that single source of truth, understand all that complexity in a single report, perhaps, that's a real game changer.
Well, one of our consultants shared, because I was asking some of our consultants to say, hey, we're going to be doing a podcast on this. And by the way, I know Jeff and CJ, you guys are about to do a webinar on this and on what this kind of actually looks like in NetSuite. But I asked some of our consultants, I said, hey, what are some of the experiences you guys have seen recently because of the uncertainty that Iqra is certain about, those uncertainties. And one of our consultants works with a food and bev company. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, you alluded to this too. It's like when it comes to inventory, sometimes, it's like, how long is inventory good for? Well, with food,
Not very
expiration
long.
dates are a very real thing. And so you can only have it for so long. Well, this particular food and bev company only kept a certain amount of stock of eggs. And as many of you all know, if you look in the news
Lucky
at
them.
all, in the last few
Relevant
years,
topic.
you see like 160 million chickens killed, and stuff just because of bird flu and this and that. So for them, all of a sudden this became very real, having to understand, good communication with their suppliers, their egg suppliers, knowing exactly how much inventory to have. And they said because they had the system in place, they're able to do a lot of this. So these are some of the real solves that are happening in these uncertain times. Jeff and CJ, anything else? I don't want to miss anything else that you've seen that are kind of some real world helps when it comes to managing our inventory well or doing inventory planning during these uncertain times.
Yeah, I think one of them is I'll allude to Iqra's coffee issue that you brought up earlier on. I can remember working with a
Running low
coffee
on stock.
manufacturer. Exactly, yeah. They were very concerned about that, that first expiry, first out, because every day that inventory sits in their warehouse, those coffee beans are getting closer to being tossed in the garbage because they're not useful to me
To
anymore.
me.
To you, right,
Give
Iqra?
them to me.
It's nice to know we have a coffee disposal here.
Yes.
But understanding that it's not just a ton of coffee that I have in my warehouse, but it's a ton of coffee segmented into all these groups with different expiry dates and making sure that I'm utilizing it in the most efficient manner possible. Boy, again, I hate to keep using the word game changer, but it's a game changer when you're dealing in that environment in food and beverage, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I talking with you guys, and here's I think of so many of the different things that we're dealing with. Inventory is tricky because none of us have a crystal ball. Jeff, you mentioned at the beginning of our time here together that wouldn't it be cool to do that just in time inventory, and we've said words like just in time and safety stock. If we had a crystal ball, you wouldn't even need safety stock. We would just have the perfect amount of inventory for every order that came in, and so it would go out exactly at that time, or we could make that product just in time. But in a real world, there is such a thing as safety stock. So I asked one of our consultants who's been around a long time here, and I asked him about, hey, what are some of these real tips that you've used in the system? And this guy's been in NetSuite for decades, and he happens to use it. And there's some great ERPs out there, but he happened to use NetSuite. And he said, not only is it the software, but it's having the wisdom of a consultant who can help someone use that software wisely. And one thing that he did with a particular customer was really trying to struggle with how much of this inventory during these times to actually have on the shelf. And we've seen inexperienced customers just kind of say, well, order, this many of everything. Well, what this consultant said is he said, hey, we looked at what this customer had, what their biggest profit, biggest revenue earner was in the last year or so. And there was basically 2 items that earned, believe it or not, 80% of their revenue were within 2 items. One was the item that they sold the most of, and one was the item that happened to be one of their more expensive items. They didn't sell as many, but it was so expensive that they made lots of revenue off it. So what they did with this particular customer is they said, hey, since you made literally 80% of your profit with just these 2 items, make sure that you take, hey, here's this big revenue earner item. Here's this, you sell tons of these items. Let's really focus on making sure you hit your inventory right on that. And NetSuite has some great forecasting tools and stuff on here's last year's numbers. Here's what happened during this time of year last year with this, and having those numbers. And then they were able to kind of do some good planning with the other stuff. But hey, let's hit these especially right. And that was something that was really helpful to this particular company when you find that, less than 10% of their inventory was really giving them 80% of their revenue. That it'd be
they didn't even know.
Yeah, hit that mark right.
Yeah.
So and that's when you bring someone who's been doing a long time along, it's good to be able to know some of those things.
Jonathan mentioned this already once before, but if you guys wanted to learn more about inventory management and see CJ and Jeff again, there is a webinar that's going to be hosted. And you can find that information in the podcast notes below. And, we'd love to see you there.
I'll be there.
Me too.
So let me ask you, our listeners, what are some of the things that you've experienced? What have been some of the tips and tricks that you've been able to use, whether in a system like this or just something that you've used for years to help during uncertain times, your inventory planning and your inventory management? We'd love to hear from you. So please jump into the comment section. Tell us that. And like I said, if this is valuable at all, hit the subscribe button. We'd love to talk with you again. As a matter of fact, in this podcast here, what we plan on doing is we plan on trying to bring in people who are out there on the front lines who do this all the time. And so,
love to talk to you.
Yeah. And next time on this podcast, ERP on Tap, we are going to actually bring somebody from our Acumatica team to talk about a certain vertical, which is the construction industry. And so we're going to be in Iqra's world, but we're bringing someone in who Iqra knows and works with all the time. Who's going to talk about what that looks like and how service companies can do some good project management and stuff to be very efficient, especially in that restoration and construction space and that kind of stuff. That will be our next episode. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, super exciting.
Jeff and CJ, man, thanks, guys. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
I love having you here.
Good stuff. We appreciate it. Please, nobody else move to Thailand with Jeff. He wants to keep that island all to himself. So
and send your coffee to me.
That's right. Absolutely. Yes.
Your beans.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next time on ERP on Tap.
Bye.
By the way, is Thailand an island? I just called it an island.
Oh, he left. He's pissed.
Thailand is not an island.